The Nissan X-Trail has always been the slightly more rugged utilitarian cousin to the Qashqai, and since we've got a new version of the Qashqai, that means we get a new version of the X-Trail. Now, over 2 decades, more than 2 million X-Trails have been shifted across the world, so it's a very important car to Nissan. And as such, it's fitted this latest one with loads of new equipment as well as an efficient new hybrid powertrain. Now, we've come out to Slovenia to find out just what this new X-Trail has to offer. So let's get inside and find out what it's got.
We really like the look of this new X-Trail. It's got a load of really cool touches, and the premium feel that's brought through those chrome accents makes this car look, well, a little bit more upmarket than before. It's also chunky and has that off-road inspired look that so many people are after at the moment. And if you have a look at the back of the car, you might notice that the boot handle is separate and not where you might expect to find it. Now that actually harks back to the previous generation X-Trail, and it shows that this latest X-Trail, well, it acknowledges its predecessors.
There's a nice combination of modern technology with some old school features inside the cabin of the X-Trail. Now, for instance, we've got a new 12.3-inch display, and that's really crisp, really clear, and it has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in it too. But contrasting this is some nice physical controls for the heating and ventilation. So they've got chunky dials which are easy to operate when you're on the move. This particular car has this bright contrast colour for the leather, but as I understand, most of the cars coming to the UK will be available in darker shades. So as this isn't for everyone, there is going to be an option. In terms of practicality, we've got some nice deep cup holders, a wireless charging pad for your smartphone, and we've got this big area underneath, which is really handy for loose items that would otherwise find themselves lost within the interior. Overall, I really like the feel of this car, but most importantly, everything feels very well screwed together. And I think that's important for a car like the X-Trail, which is sold on its ruggedness and its ability to deal with everyday situations. The X-Trail is actually physically quite a large car, so it probably won't come as much of a surprise that there's plenty of legroom in the back. Now, the driver's seat does move automatically backwards to make it easier for the driver to get in and out. So this is further back than it would be for me, and I'm just under 6 foot, and I've still got loads of knee room and loads of headroom too, despite us having a panoramic sunroof in here. But of course, it's not about having adults in here all the time. The X-Trail is primarily focused at families. So for the kids, there is plenty of storage down the side to put water bottles and drinks and snacks. And in the middle, we've got 2 different chargers. We've got a conventional USB and a USB-C and independent heating controls. So there's a solution to charging devices or iPads or other things in the back here. And it means that the people in the back can get the temperature just as they want it. Elsewhere, the material quality is just as good, and we've got some handy little seat back pockets for storing odds and ends. It's a very practical, very focused area, and it's all tied together with a really nice build quality. Now, the big trump card, of course, with the X-Trail is that it's a 7-seater, so it provides an extra set of seats over the Qashqai. Now, sitting back here, things are pretty tight. Now, as I mentioned, I'm just under 6 foot, and I'm squished in here, and this seat is actually in its furthest forward position on its rails, so the person in the middle seat, well, they're not going to be able to get their legs in whatsoever. So I would definitely put this down as to more of an occasional seat, definitely for smaller kids, but adults here, you're not going to be able to get an adult in the back and adults in the middle in any sort of comfort. So realistically, like as I mentioned, this is going to be an occasional 7-seater, but I think most people are probably going to use it as a 5-seater with the option of having these if and when you might need them.
You joined me on a very foggy morning back in Slovenia on day 2 of driving the Nissan X-Trail, which is why my t-shirt has changed. So no, I haven't just gone for a mid-review costume change. But we are now driving the X-Trail for the 2nd day, which means that we can explain what's going on underneath it. Now, it uses a similar setup to the one that's been used in the Qashqai, and that means this car gets its new e-power setup. What does that entail? Well, rather than the engine being used to drive the wheels, instead the engine is used somewhat like a generator, powering the electric motors on the front 2 wheels, and in this case on this 4-wheel drive version, the rear 2 wheels, sending the power through to them, so you get a more electrified setup. But what does that really mean in practice? Well, it actually makes the car quite smooth and easy to drive. Providing you're not asking an awful lot of it, the X-Trail is really smooth and quiet. There's plenty enough performance as and when you need it. It can be a little bit vocal when you really are stepping on the throttle a little bit more, but actually for normal low-speed driving and even for highway driving on the motorway, it's very quiet and responsive. In terms of efficiency, Nissan claims that you'll be able to get about 45 mpg for this version, and you'll get better efficiency from the two-wheel drive version. Of course, if you want some extra off-road capability, or you want a little bit of extra traction when things get slippery, this E-Force version is definitely the one to go for. The steering is pretty light and it's relatively accurate too. There are some different modes to add some weight to the steering. If you put it in sport mode, for instance, you get slightly heavier steering setup and a sharper throttle response, but in reality you're going to leave it in its regular modes and just carry on as you would. It's also very refined, this car. It's quiet at speed and there's not too much wind or road noise generated, even when you're travelling at greater speeds. The X-Trail is a physically large car, so you do have to be a little bit wary about positioning it until you are used to the car as a whole. However, thanks to big wing mirrors and a clear view over the shoulder, this is an easy car to pilot. You could argue, why doesn't Nissan offer a plug-in hybrid version of the X-Trail, or indeed the Qashqai? But for now, Nissan says that its priority lies in regular hybrids and in making them as efficient and as good to drive as possible. One thing that this car also includes is Nissan's famous e-pedal, which is something that we've seen included on the fully electric Leaf for a little while. You can select it, and what it does is it maximizes the amount of regeneration coming through the brakes or reversing of the electric motor, and so you really can drive it on one pedal. That's really useful for when you're driving around town. Not only does it make it a slightly more relaxing and easier driving experience, but it also means that you're harvesting energy whenever you're slowing down, which is always a good thing to keep those batteries topped up. For a lot of the time, the X-Trail will be able to run in electric only mode, especially at low speeds and when you're crawling through town. So if you're doing shorter trips to school, or if you're doing shorter commutes, then the efficiency of the X-Trail will definitely come to the fore. And in terms of performance, the X-Trail in this top spec e-Power E-Force, there's a lot of E's going on, will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in around 7 seconds, which is pretty decent for a car of this size. Remember, it is a large 7-seater. But of course, this isn't the type of car that's focused on performance. It's focused on efficiency and ease of driving. And I think it ticks both of those boxes really well. It also rides very nicely despite being on large wheels. And I think against the Qashqai, which is going to carry around a £5,000 premium over the Qashqai, it feels like a slightly more well-rounded experience. It certainly feels like a more upmarket and premium one, that's for sure.
The new Nissan X-Trail brings a really pleasant blend of rugged features, but with that premium build quality that is so required by the segment at the moment. As you can see, it can still go off-road, but more importantly, it's refined and comfortable and efficient when you're on the road. I think against the Qashqai, it's a slightly more attractive prospect, simply because of that 7-seat versatility and also the overall impression that you get from the car. It's somewhat more exciting, more adventure focused, and I think that's going to really appeal to families. There's the 5-seater option too, and because prices start at just over £30,000, it's not breaking the bank, particularly when you compare it to the standard Qashqai. If you are after a family vehicle, and that's exactly what the X-Trail is, it feels as if the new Nissan X-Trail has been designed for families that want to have fun from the very outset. So if that's you, well, it's well worth checking out.